Hi everyone, welcome to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University video lesson program. Today we are discussing on BA Sociology course 1 Fundamentals of Sociology, which is for the benefit of the BA first year sociology students of first semester and first year. And we are discussing on the conflict perspective of Karl Marx and his contribution to the conflict perspective. Conflict means it is a very revolutionary kind of perspective in the sociological studies, and for discussion today we have one eminent expert in sociological perspective, that is Professor H.R. Jayapal, Professor of Sociology, Karnataka State Open University, Mysore, Karnataka State. Welcome you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir.
Sir, namaste.
Namaste.
Sir, in the sociological perspectives, now we are discussing on the conflict perspective. So, before we start, can you explain about the what is conflict?
Sir, thank you. So, conflict is one of the basic defining aspects of society. There is no society which is free from conflict. How the consensus is one face of the coin, in a similar way conflict is another face of the coin. So, therefore, conflict is an universal phenomenon. No society is free from the aspect of conflict. That said, it does not mean that conflict has to be viewed always in a negative way. Conflict need not be understood on negative lines. It need not be understood on with negative connotations. So, conflict is one of the basic defining aspects of society. It is found in all societies, wherever you go, whichever the country you go, whichever the society or community. So, conflict is embedded in our social relations. What is conflict? It's we can give a simple definition about, we will try to make sense of conflict. So, conflict can be defined as, to put it in a micro perspective, to define conflict in a micro scale. Conflict can be defined as a situation of interacting individuals. It refers to a situation of interacting individuals where they are trying to prevent each other from realizing their goals. So, conflict refers to a situation in which interacting individuals trying to prevent each other from realizing their goals.
Okay.
So, that means conflict means there is a contestation. So, in conflict means there is some disagreement. So, there is that means it is not consensus. What is said is, or what is claimed is not accepted, or there is, so there is a difference, divergence, and therefore and also there will be dissensus, not consensus, there will be dissensus. So, what one says or what one does or what one has interest, what type of interest that has by a particular individual may not be agreed by another individual. So, this is the root of conflict. So, difference is the key aspect of conflict.
So, then what is conflict perspective?
Yes, sir. As I told yesterday, perspective is an higher order of theorizing the reality. Conflict perspective clearly articulates that conflict is one of the major basic processes of society. It is a major process of society. So, conflict perspective, it highlights the role of centrality of conflict in our everyday life, of our society. How, so the conflict is as such is intimately linked with the aspect of social change. So, conflict always, the conflict between the individuals or conflict between the units bring changes in the society. So, conflict in fact ends the duality, conflict ends the divergence, conflict ends the differences, and thus it brings unity. So, this is the significance of conflict. Thus, conflict need not be rated or understood on negative lines. Conflict is very much positive. Conflict is very much required for society because it eliminates the contradictions. it eliminates the differences, it eliminates the divergences and restores the unity. So, viewed in this way, conflict has a positive role to play in society. Not only positive, it also has a clinical role. Clinical in the sense, it is a clinical from the point of system, because it wipes out the things which are causing problem, which are causing the difference, and it brings back the system to the state of unity. So, therefore, in that way conflict becomes clinical, and also conflict is also considered as redemptive. Conflict, when we talk about the conflict, when conflict perspectives, when it talks about conflict, there are two aspects that we have to consider. One is power, the second one is power, and the second one is reasoning, because conflict perspective gives more importance to reasoning, that means to say vivechane. So, it is more critical. Conflict, what I have to say, the conflict behind any conflict, what we can see is a critical aspect. Conflict perspective sees, or it discerns the component of what we say a critical thinking embedded in this conflict process, and the power. And the power, it will be used by individuals who are in the process of involved in conflict, will use the power to change the reality, to bring the changes in the affairs of our society. So, therefore, conflict has redemptive quality. It re-establishes, it changes the nature of system, it changes the character of system. So, therefore, the ideas of progress, equality, are very much, and also reasoning are very much embedded in conflict perspective.
Can you say about the evolution of Marxian conflict theory, sir?
Yes, sir. Before talking about the evolution of Marxian theory, first we can talk about the evolution of the conflict perspective as such. So, broadly, when we historically review the development of or the evolution of conflict perspective, we will come across two developments, or two perspectives, or two strands within the conflict perspective. One, the traditional theories of conflict, which focused on power relations. So, from the theory of Machiavelli to even to the scholars like our Arab scholar Ibn Khaldun, or even to theorists like prior to what we say Machiavelli, Polybius, or from our Indian context Kautilya's Arthashastra, they all emphasize the centrality of conflict. So, and also Jane Bodin, these all philosophers emphasize the centrality of conflict in our life. Here, conflict in this tradition, according to them, so what I am trying to say, in conflict, within the conflict perspective, there are two traditions. One, that is power relations tradition, which emphasize the significance of power relations in the emergence of conflict. Second one is the competitive tradition, that means which gives emphasis to the competition, that is from economic philosophy, like so where competition is viewed as another form of conflict, like is viewed as form of impersonal conflict. It is a form of impersonal conflict, whereas power relations bring some sort of direct like personal conflict, whereas in competition competition is viewed as impersonal conflict. So, there are two traditions within this conflict perspective. One perspective which emphasizes the centrality of power relationship in conflict. The second one emphasizes the role of competition in conflict. Okay. So, I mentioned that from our Indian context or from eastern part of the world, Kautilya's Arthashastra is a classic example for the conflict, and also his work Arthashastra, and also Heraclitus, famous Greek philosopher Heraclitus, who saw the entire world in a state of flux. For him, everything keeps changing. So, that is why Heraclitus said, a same person can't delve into the same river twice. He can't dive into the same river twice, because that highlights the centrality of the changes, because by the second time, though he jumps into the same river, the water that is flowing now is different from the water that was flowing when he jumped for the first time, and also now he is in different state, he is wet, and also time has passed. So, that means what, like symbolically he said, that emphasizes the importance of change. He saw the entire world in a state of flux, everything keeps changing. So, Heraclitus viewed conflict as the law of visible universe. Heraclitus viewed conflict as the law of visible universe. So, such is the importance of conflict. No society is free from this. And also, the famous Arab scholar Ibn Khaldun, in fact, who discovered the significance of Aristotle's works and everything, who also spoke about conflict. So, in much like to Durkheim, he talked about social solidarity and also emphasized the centrality of conflict. So, and Machiavelli, we know very familiar with Machiavelli and also Jane Bodin. So, these Polybius talks about the centrality of power in conflict. So, how he talks about he talks about this society, peace and the formation of state and conflict. Polybius, who talked about first there will be monarchy, the changes monarchy leads, when there are problems in monarchy, it leads to changes. So, monarchy is replaced by kingship. So, when kings will be very benevolent, but later the successor to kings will not be benevolent, so that will be thrown out. So, that leads to the aristocracy. Again, in aristocracy, there also people forget the cause of the cause and interest of justice. So, they will also be overthrown. That leads to democracy. And democracy, finally again it will be overthrown by monarchy for the restoration of peace and justice. So, this is a sort of cyclical view of conflict put forth by Polybius. So, this is like a development of conflict theory. So, this is how we have tried to understand. There are two traditions. One is power relations tradition. The second one is second tradition, which emphasizes the significance of competition. That is an impersonal form of conflict. But conflict, what we have to understand in sociology, generally we say that while understanding sociological theory, first we understand structural functionalism, then switch over to conflict. No, in my view, conflict should come first, because conflict is the idea of conflict, and its what should I say, its main arguments of conflict are rooted in Enlightenment tradition. So, we know that Enlightenment gave more importance to equality, rights of individuals and the reasoning. And also, so reasoning, and it gave importance to emancipation of individuals. It did not accept all Enlightenment thinkers, major what we call as philosophers, the revolutionary philosophers, we were called as philosophers. They did not agree the oppressive rules of society, oppressive rules of political system. So, they always advocated for the rights of individual and freedom of the individuals. So therefore, the idea of conflict and its significant and its what we say what to put it, its emancipation, reasoning and emancipation, these are the two cornerstones of conflict theory. Reasoning and emancipation.
Logical reasoning.
Not logical reasoning. That reasoning means, in a sense, I am saying that thinking process or thought process of individuals. Okay. So, that reasoning means it gave more importance to thinking process of individual. Like, so individuals are gifted with thinking process. They are need not be understood as creatures. So, therefore, like reasoning and emancipation. So, it upheld the liberty of individuals. Therefore, conflict theory perspective is embedded in Enlightenment tradition. It became a vehicle of conflict perspective, became a vehicle of Enlightenment thinking. So, rights of individual, equality, so emancipation are the key cornerstones of Enlightenment philosophy, and conflict perspective is the embodiment of Enlightenment thinking. So, therefore, that is why whether it may be the ideas of Jacques Rousseau or other, like, so much of revolutionary the thinkings or ideas are present in Rousseau's philosophy. In fact, we know that French Revolution, in fact, French Revolution is considered as the great revolution. It is called as Mahakranti, not simple Kranti. It is not a Kranti. It is called as French Revolution, means we say Mahakranti. So, because Rousseau's views about state of nature, a natural state, how the social order, when it is not based on a state of nature, how it is against the nature of state, how it leads to conflict, how it brings problems. And Rousseau talks about alienation. These all things influenced Karl Marx. Rousseau talks about will. Rousseau talks about general will. They all had so much decisive influence on Karl Marx. Of course, Rousseau's ideas left a very deep impact on Emile Durkheim's works also, but on Karl Marx it's very significant. So that's why Marx developed the theory of alienation. Of course, apart from the influence of Hegel's works on theory of alienation, Marx was very much influenced by the theory of Rousseau's views on alienation and estrangement. So therefore, that's why there is an sociologist called, famous, you might have heard, Don Martindale. In his work, celebrated work, Nature and Types of Sociological Theory, he discusses. So, in the name of scientific thinking, this element of conservatism was brought and attached to scientific thinking. Actually, the main principle or the main character of Enlightenment philosophy is progress conflict. Its conflict is very much embedded. It focused on the rights of individual. It condemned the some of the unequal practices of society, and also it condemned the power system. So it focused on the emancipation of individuals. So therefore, conflict perspective is an embodiment of Enlightenment thinking. But Comte's attempt here becomes somewhat conservative. He wanted to, that's why Comte's philosophy, if Comte's philosophy becomes positive philosophy, Marx's philosophy becomes negative critical philosophy. Negative here, it is not runatmaka. Let us understand, negative critical philosophy, negative means it is not runatmaka. Instead, it is nirakarana. Negative means it denies the oppressive practices of the existing system. Negative and critical philosophy. It not only understands the reality, what it is, but it also evaluates the present system. And it talks about what should be the goal of the things. So put it in this way, conflict tradition is an embodiment of Enlightenment philosophy. In conflict philosophy, Marxian theory of conflict is considered as a fountain. It is a fountainhead. It is considered as Marxian theory of conflict is considered as a fountainhead because it went on inspiring. Even today, it continues to inspire the sociologists and other philosophers about the centrality of conflict in our social life. For Marx, if we have to understand Marx's theory of conflict, we also have to understand his theory of dialectical philosophy. When we know that Marx was influenced by Hegel's theory of dialectics, but Hegel gave more importance to mental categories like that is consciousness, history, and these things he gave more importance. Whereas Marx wanted to understand the dialectics on the basis of the material conditions of society.
So, what is the historical materialism?
Yes, historical materialism, it is a philosophy, it is also called as dialectical philosophy of Karl Marx. We have to ask question, what is dialectical philosophy? Dialectical philosophy views reality in terms of interaction between two opposite elements. So, where the reality is understood as an interaction between two opposing blocks or two opposing units, which are characterized by contradictions. So, what Marx says is that, see, for Marx, labor is very much, labor is a medium of expression for Marx. For Marx, labor is the medium of expression, that is self-assertion, and it becomes it's a medium for self-creativity for human beings. For Marx, according to Marx, it is through the labor humans will connect themselves with the nature. It is through the labor humans connect with the nature. It is through the labor humans bring changes in the nature and wrest their livelihood. Thus, Marx sees the interconnections between human society and natural order through the labor. So, labor becomes the medium of expression, labor becomes the medium of self-assertion, labor becomes the medium of creativity. This is very much important from the point of progress, individual's development. This is called as thesis. But unfortunately, the existing reality, to say the present capitalist system, in Marx's view, capitalist system where there are bipolar classes, what we say bourgeois and proletariats. So what happens? These two classes are not voluntary. They are involuntary, not that laborers went and they accepted to become laborers. Instead, the situation was imposed on them to become laborers. So, therefore, what is the major motive of capitalism? The major aim of capitalism is accumulation of the wealth, not accumulation of mere accumulation of wealth. Accumulation for the sake of accumulation. There will be no end to this process of accumulation. This puts miseries on laborers and their expression. So, their labor is no more creative now. It becomes an objectified. So, where laborers do not feel that their labor is their expression of creativity. The very object produced by their labor, it becomes not an extension of their creativity. The object itself becomes, starts hunting the laborers. So, this is called as contradiction, this is called as antithesis, because the first one is thesis, I told. This is antithesis because it is trying to shut the possibilities of what we say the progress of individuals. I told labor is an expression of self-confidence, labor is an expression of human assertion and creativity. That is now being blocked by, the developments under capitalism. This is called as antithesis. This is called as antithesis. Thesis, antithesis is an affirmation. It is through labor individuals affirm themselves, assert themselves. It is the medium of their creativity. It is for their development. But in capitalism, what happens? It oppresses individuals. So, therefore, it is an antithesis. It prevents the development of individuals. So, the last stage is synthesis. The first one is thesis, affirmation. Second is antithesis, that is negation. The third one is synthesis, that is called as negation of negation. Here individuals will make efforts to come out of this blocking conditions or will come out of this negation condition. How? That is through the development of both subjective and objective situation. So, there will be changes in the consciousness of the people who are oppressing them. What is the reason for their oppression? How they are being oppressed? And at the same time, on the objective conditions, all the laborers, all the people, workers will realize that, will develop that consciousness, who is oppressing them, how their rights are oppressed, and what are the ways to come out of this. So, and in Marxian model, so that's why they launch organized struggle against this bourgeois, bourgeois classes, that will lead to class conflict. So, in this class conflict, the laborers will overthrow the capitalist classes, and there will not be there will not be any property relations, there will not be any monopoly over the production relations. So, this leads to equality. So, there will not be any capitalist classes, there is no question of property, there is no question of unequal distribution of income and wealth, everything is owned by everyone. So, every human being works according to his capacity, and every human being gets back according to his needs. This is the true gist of communism.
Yes, so, similarly, in the concepts of Karl Marx, one among them is growth of class. How we can see the growth of class in the views of the Karl Marx?
Growth of class, that I made it clear. Marx is a relativizing historicist. He viewed reality from historical lens. In every particular periods of history, there are class relations. No society is free from class relations. So, there may be Asiatic society. So, there was primitive communism, Asiatic society, so feudalism. So, in feudalism means the middle age, what we call European countries, if you go to our European continent during middle age time. So, medieval history, if you call medieval period. So, there it was characterized by the estate system. There were three classes, no? There were priests, nobles, and the clergy, nobles, and the serfs. That was there. So, that capitalism overthrew with the development of due to French Revolution and Industrial Revolution, that brought changes in feudal system. It completely destroyed feudal system, estate system. That gave way to capitalist system. Again, in every period or every epoch in history is characterized by class relations. But That said, that does not mean that they are identical, they are different. In every age, of course, it is characterized by class relations, but their content is different from the nature of class relations in one period is different from another. So, therefore, that led to the development of modern capitalism. So, it destroyed feudalism, that is estate system. So, in this modern capitalist system, we can see two classes, that is the emergence of, that is owner classes or bourgeois classes. The second one is laborer or proletariat. And what we have to understand is that laborers have not become laborers out of their volition, out of their will. The situation have made them, they are involuntarily. It is not a voluntary process, it is involuntary process. So, therefore, laborers are made to become laborers. So, just I will give you an example. So, what happened during after the French Revolution. So, when Louis Bonaparte was at the helm of affairs, so the state itself gave more importance to this private accumulation of, it supported capitalism then and emerging capitalism. So, the direct producers were displaced from their location. Who are direct producers? The peasants. Peasant is a direct producer who produce his own means of production, his own subsistence. But such peasants were evicted from their lands. Not only peasants along with maybe like artisans or any classes, they were alienated from their means of production. And in the changed situation, they had to become laborer classes in order to survive. Because in the changed circumstances, they couldn't get an employment or job working opportunity to lead their decent life. They had to accept whatever was there. That was a sort of changes brought by capitalism. That was not, from evaluative point of view, that was not conducive for the emancipation of workers. So, therefore, the concentration of wealth in the hands of one class and on the other hand growing misery of other class, that is laborers, created great contradictions. So, which ultimately led to the development of consciousness in the laborers and as well as the development of objective conditions. Together it brought revolutions, the workers' struggle against capitalists, that led to change in Marxian model that brings changes.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for explaining about the what is conflict and about the conflict perspective and the contributions of the Karl Marx to the conflict perspective. This will help for our learners very easily. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for the opportunity.